Thank you, Miriam. Macbeth said famously of life that it was but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. He said it was a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. I'm not sure why this quotation wouldn't leave my head as I pondered the role of the media for this event, but you can probably see where I'm heading. I retired 2 years ago, as Miriam says, after 43 years in journalism, 4 years in the Irish Times, 4 years in radio, the balance in television. And now I am a bit cynical, to my own utter surprise, because I am not a cynic by nature. Irregardless, as the man says, I feel I've earned the right to be cynical about journalism after all this time. And certainly, as Macbeth put it, we strut and, yes, we fret our hour upon the stage. Well, actually, 15 minutes, according to Joe. And then we are heard no more. Check. A tale told by an idiot? Check. Full of sound and fury? Check again. And is that a bit harsh, signifying nothing? Well, check again. I think quite early on I realized that a strong dose of self-loathing was a useful antidote to the self-importance that permeates journalism. So what is the media? We know today that it houses so many of our modern high priests. Could we say it's the essential lifeblood of a democracy, one of the great guarantors of a free society? Many people would simply answer yes to both those questions. But hey, isn't there a little bit of an Achilles heel here somewhere? Achilles in Greek mythology, just to remind you, was largely invincible in battle, but had in his heel a fatal area of vulnerability that led ultimately to his downfall. So it seems to me in many respects it is with the media. It exists mainly as a huckster. It forages in the marketplace, selling its wares to survive. You call it the lifeblood of a democracy, if you like, but you could also call it a cheap and shoddy piece of goods that must be sold and traded and endlessly dressed up as attractive and interesting and made to produce a profit from money men, if it is to exist at all. It's a stall in the marketplace where shelf space is shared between the worthless and the very precious. The media pretends to itself and its audience that it deals with reality, but the reality it deals with is an utterly distorted one, seen largely through the prism of news and entertainment. If the media were human, it would be schizophrenic. It would be at once Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If it were a god, it would be Janus-faced, offering peace occasionally, but more often war. War of all sorts, divisions, conflicts, impending disasters, breakdowns, and crises. The media offers us the very cheapest of goods, worthless throwaway products that you wouldn't spit on before it hands us invaluable and precious jewels. As a force in our society, it's embarrassing, cruel, hard-hearted, and prostituted, and yet we know that it can be brave and reassuring and invaluable. But very often it is a foul, reptilian creature oozing soft entreaties and vicious cruelty in alternate breaths. That's what we do. And in this guise, it is a creature that diminishes us. It lowers our humanity, it feeds our worst appetites for voyeurism and conflict, and yet again, occasionally it uplifts and restores our dwindling faith in our humanity. 43 years, I think I'm entitled. This miserable, personality-disorientated animal, my friends, hydra-headed and snake-like, gorging on its own absurd self-importance, is journalism. Frankly, you let it into your house at your peril. And it seems to me that if such a beast displays activities which have been so clearly and brilliantly revealed to us by Professor Roy, and as revealed by The Guardian and the Leveson inquiry, who can be surprised? It's like professional sportsmen and women doing what they have to do to win. Just expect them to do what they have to do to win. Don't be naive about it. Expect the media to try and sell the product. Expect the media to seek out products that they can sell. It's what we do. You can regulate it all you like, but the basics remain the basics. And many years ago, I found myself greatly taken with the analysis of John Burt and Peter Jay, who argued that news, TV news in particular, was biased against understanding. And it's a view I've carried with me all my professional life ever since. Now, of course, I exclude RTE from all of this. And myself. Well, actually, I don't. But I just don't quite feel able at this moment to share my many personal journalistic traumas with you all. Raise the appearance fee, Joe, and I'll make a full confession. Anyway, I'm going to now come down from the pulpit, sorry about that, and talk a little bit about some of the traumas and ructions that currently afflict the organisation that I know best, which is RTE. And starting with the Mission to Pray aftermath. The BAI commissioned report on the Mission to Pray debacle was, in my view, a very poor document. I believe it was also terribly poorly reported in the media. Now, I have written extensively about this elsewhere, as some of you who read the Sunday Business Post might be familiar. And I have nothing against Anna Carraher. I'm sure she's a wonderful person, extremely professional. But her report was really a non-report, in that the key element which had to be decided, which was, had RTE broken the Broadcasting Act in two very specific respects, had been decided before she started and conceded by RTE. Guilty, hands up, before she even started. All the report had to do was to fill in the blanks above. Why did this happen? How could such a programme reach air? And this Ms. Carraher singularly failed to explain. Now, if I had a bit more time, and if there wasn't a danger, as you can imagine, of compounding the damage to Father Reynolds, I could try, as I believe I can, explain to this audience how this programme reached air. It was a disaster. Father Reynolds was treated abominably. There is no question about that. But it is not such a mystery as to how it got on air. And the key error, in my view, and strangely enough, was not fundamentally bad journalism, particularly involving Aoife Kavanagh, an old colleague of mine, but a case of hubris, which is to say misguided arrogance and overconfidence. In my contention, and I have argued it here in great detail, and contrary to most published comment on this matter, the Carraher report failed to give a fully accurate or indeed fully coherent view of how this disaster unfolded. And if that's right, it's a serious matter. And if I'm further right that it misjudged the journalism and criticised it unfairly, then we have another difficulty as we move forward, because the aftermath of this affair finds RTE, television, news and current affairs, in fact the station as a whole, at a watershed. And today it is searching for the correct way to get over this car crash of an event. And knowing exactly what just happened and why it happened is critical to formulating your next step. So I do not believe Ms. Carraher and the BAI Compliance Committee have helped greatly in that matter. And it's not a view I expect you to agree with in this audience, and I'm sorry I can't expound on it further. Some of you may have read this, or you may have paid attention to the outpourings of a certain Vincent Brown, who has touched on this issue also. But it remains my view. Currently, a high-level committee of 3, chaired by Maurice Hayes, is investigating 2 of the programme makers. Effectively, the inquiry against them is to determine whether there has been gross incompetence in this programme. There has been loose, uninformed talk of dismissals. I do not believe that there are grounds for any dismissal, and I do not expect that there will be dismissals. But what is less debatable is that it's a watershed moment for RTE. And there's an interesting and unfortunate comparison to be made today between the situation that we have and that which occurred in 1969 after the tribunal report on the 7 days money lending on illegal money lending, which some of you may remember. I remember I had started my professional career at the time. I remember it very clearly. The details, of course, are totally different, but certain factors are similar. There was a flawed program. It led to outside intervention, which produced stern and not always accurate criticism of the program makers. And the upshot back in 1969 and as today was the removal and dispersal of key program makers from their posts. All of that on both occasions had a traumatic impact overall on the psyche of the national broadcaster. That's where we're at today. Then 7 days limped on for another 7 years until the end of 1976. But what with the Northern Troubles, did it ever recover its bite? Maybe Joe could tell us on that front. It's open to question. So I ask the question now, will prime time limp on? Without its investigative arm, which has already been dispensed with, without its editor or its executive producer in charge of the investigative strand, or its very skilled overseer, Ed Mulhall, the now retired Director of News. So the time possibly might be right for a new program, a new ethos, and a new feel. Now, whatever happens, and this is something I expect you might agree with me on, I think we can agree that it's essential our chairperson today continues her peerless role at the centre of RTE's current affairs. But in the area generally, there is scope for much positive change. Now, what is slightly worrying on the investigative front is that RTE have publicly made two somewhat opposing, almost contradictory statements. The Director General has said that he's committed to strong investigative programming. He's also said that nothing like the Mission to Prey disaster can be allowed to recur. Well, one can certainly understand why he said that latter. But unfortunately, risk is inherent in investigative programming. There's only one real way to ensure that things can't go seriously wrong, and that's not to do it at all, which is what most people choose. You do these programs and you are at risk. You're especially at risk if you take on a powerful person or group, anyone with a professional reputation. You can start thinking of 6 figures and moving quickly on to 7 if you don't get it right. So I would just say, as Director General and as a long-standing quality broadcaster and journalist in his own right, Noel Curran, the man who set up Primetime Investigates and brought RTE to a whole new place, is deeply committed to investigative programming. But there's a bottom line here, surely, for him and for his organisation, which is that this simply cannot recur, not any time soon. So how that plays out, you can work out for yourself. We'll find out. And that situation, I'm coming towards the end, you'll be glad to hear. A few minutes for discussion, not much. Sorry about that. The situation brings into play another great story, which is also untold largely in Ireland's print media. Sorry, Kevin, but maybe we can get onto it, about RTE. And that is the subterranean battle to hold on to prime time scheduling for serious current affairs and news. Prime time at prime time is simply taken for granted in public discussion in this country. And yet it is a unique and special characteristic of Irish television that such programmes go out in the heart of prime time on television. Most television schedules for many years past in other countries have shifted current affairs out of its prime time viewing slots, but not RTE. But part of that is that there's been a constant struggle behind the scenes to maintain this. It's just a battle going on within the organisation that you don't hear about. For years, the practical reality within RTE has been that if the ratings for news and current affairs between 9 and 10 were to slip appreciably, then those prized slots would be ceded to movies or to entertainment. Everybody has known that. The people running current affairs have known it. And hitherto, obviously, the battle has been won by current affairs, otherwise you wouldn't have prime time twice a week at 9:30, and indeed the news at 9. That's been some achievement, but not without some cost. A fixation on ratings has a downside. Those who deny that ratings chasing has not impacted on prime time, in my view, are not seeing clearly. And I don't connect this to the Mission to Pray shambles. That, I believe, was a serious, well-intentioned, but utterly mishandled affair. But I think ratings have certainly influenced what prime time have been choosing to do and how it has done it. Again, I have not seen this analysed very much in the print media, and I believe it does go back, unfortunately, to my initial remarks about journalists as hucksters selling our wares and under pressure, even in RTE, which has the partial cushion of the licence fee, to produce an audience for our advertisers. Now, it could be argued that if the 9:30 or even the 9 to 10 slot for news and current affairs had to be ceded, that there could be some upside to going on air later, maybe on Network 2 at 10 or half 10, something that hasn't been contemplated hitherto, but might be on the agenda before long. So what would the upside be? Well, I mean, it comes back to whether there's been some concession in the way that prime time handles its affairs. And some of us who worked in there do have long-standing issues about that. But now I'm free. I'm in the position to vent some of my thoughts. But I mean, it's open to question. Basically, I think if the upside could be if we had less attention to ratings, we might have less, I would call it, vacuous debates between people on non-issues, but debates for the sake of debates. More in-depth interrogation, one-to-one, fewer meaningless stories on crime, more time to allow fine presenters like Miriam and Richard Crowley and the rest to extract concessions from extremely well-drilled politicians. I believe it's a key difference with the Today Tonight that Joe ran in the 80s. Time was given to interviews, one-to-one. The doors of the studio were locked. The politician is in there 20 minutes. Hey, it rarely happens nowadays, but you're in there 20 minutes, and in that time, there's time to extract something. 10 minutes, 8 minutes, no, forget it. You're not going to get past the defences. Anyway, I mean, I'm just saying that that's a possible upside if prime time were to be shifted, It's not, I think, it's not something that RTE journalists wish for. The bigger platform at 9 or 9:30, and Miriam can confirm it readily, I'm sure, it would be the preferred wish. But I think we should look out for a change. The station is in the process of almost reinventing itself currently. It's desperately trying to balance its books. And frankly, all bets are off. And there I will stop. I thank you for your attention. My apologies if I've been somewhat provocative and contentious with half-baked theories and assertions. I have strutted and fretted. As you have seen, my tale had plenty of sound, a little concealed fury, and it signified, well, perhaps not very much. But thank you for your attention.